Welcome to the audiobook The Alpha and Beta's Regret, written by Jennifer Francis, narrated by Katarina Sveta and Rodney Rourke. Prologue. Lucy knew they were back. She felt them arrive the moment that they crossed into pack territory. She was so very excited. Her Alpha and Beta were back. They had been away assisting another pack for 2 whole weeks. Goddess, she had missed them so much. Right this minute, there was so much excitement growing inside of her. She knew they would come and find her. The 2 of them, to ravish her body for hours, the way they always did when they'd been gone for days to another pack. She was getting all hot and angsty just thinking about them, itching for their touch, craved it like no other. She had been their sole lover for just over a year now, shared herself with both of them, without hesitation. They were the only 2 men, wolves, who had ever been able to satisfy her sexual needs. Right from the very first day she had shifted here in this very pack. A smile touched her lips. Her first shift, a shock to all. She'd been considered wolfless, though she always knew differently. Lucy had shifted here in this pack on a visit with her mother and father and little brother. She had shifted right in front of the 2 of them, and Callie, her wolf, had run off freely into the woods. Lucy left her room, her hand on her still flat stomach. She had wonderful news to share with them. She was pregnant with twins. Callie had already told her they were both boys and there was 1 to each of them. Lucy couldn't wait to tell them. She was so very excited, knew just how excited they both would be as well. Was standing on the landing upstairs, waiting almost impatiently for them, though she did find it a little odd that they had not mind linked to her yet, to tell her they were back and coming for her. It was something they always did, bedded her for hours when they returned home, one after the other and then together. Goddess, she ached for them both. Lucy was standing with a smile on her face, waiting for them. Her alpha, Rafe, she saw first as he walked into the pack house, and her heart broke instantly. He was not alone, a woman on his arm. Tears pricked at her eyes as she, even from up on the 5th floor, saw the filigree that adorned both their necks. Callie whined in pain inside of her. He was lost to them, had found his mate. Then Beta Jack walked in. He was smiling and laughing, and her heart shattered inside of her chest. He too had a woman on his arm, was marked by her, as was she by him. Tears spilled down her cheeks, and Callie now howled in pain inside her mind. Her hand fell from her stomach and hung limply at her side, as she watched the 2 of them walk into the Alpha's office and close the door. Hadn't so much as spared her a glance. She sank down onto her knees, unable to stand as silent tears flooded from her eyes. She had lost them both. Never again would they touch her. Never again would they desire her, or even be likely to look in her direction. It was too much to bear, and not just for her, but her wolf Callie as well. Deep down inside of her, of them, this is what they had always feared. Known would happen, had just never accepted it. They were hers. She loved them with everything she had. So did her wolf. Now they were no longer hers. Never would be. Get up. A melodic voice came to her inside her mind. It was not Callie. It's time, Lucien. Get up. The voice was soft and sweet, almost singing inside her mind. Lucy stood. The lake. Come to me, my child. Her eyes fell on the closed door to the Alpha's office. Pain tore at her heart. She was carrying their children inside her, just a few weeks along. An Alpha pup and a Beta pup, sons to the men she loved, that were now no longer hers, would never be hers ever again. She could hear a soft melodic song. It was being sung inside of her mind. and felt herself be drawn by it. Felt some of her heartache even ease, though only enough to make her get up off the floor and move. The song was soft and sad. There were no words she could understand, a language unknown to her. But every part of that song beckoned every part of her to the lake, a desire so very strong, a feeling creating inside of her that everything would be okay if she got to the lake. Lucy went, without another thought, allowed that sad melodic song to enchant her broken soul, wrap it up and draw her away from this place, from her pain. No one really went to the lake. It backed onto the eastern side of the Pack's border, and the humans loved it. Were always there on the weekends and school breaks. Only a small part of the lake was inside the Pack territory. Lucy walked towards the lake, past many Pack members. Tears were still spilling down her face. They all knew that she was the Alpha and Beta's concubine, and they all knew both had returned home. Marked and mated, would have seen it as they'd gotten out of their car. The news would have traveled fast. Mo stepped out of her way, looked at her apologetically. She knew everyone here, had fitted in well, loved being here in this Pack. Now they were all looking away from her, and didn't seem to know what to say as she walked past them. Her sadness and heartbreak out in the open, for all to see. She did not care who knew she was breaking apart inside. She had a good life here, got along with everyone. The Alpha and Beta were not shy in when or where they mated her, and she herself had not cared either. Had often run from them out into the woods, so they would hunt her and catch her. They loved the hunt, and she had loved being their prey. That was now no more. Her feet stopped at the edge of the lake. It was dark now. Night had fallen on her long, lonely walk out to the lake. Neither the Alpha nor the Beta had yet to even reach out to her, to tell her what had happened. They were too wrapped up in their love bubble of a mate bond to even give her a second thought, it seemed. That sad song still beckoned to her. Swim to me, my girl. That sweet, enticing voice came to Lucy inside her mind. Callie and she were not fantastic swimmers, and hesitated at the water's edge. Lucy? She turned at the sound of a man's voice. A border patrolman stood watching her, and she saw pity in his eyes. Are you all right? Come into the lake, my child. I will save you. That soft voice practically purred with seduction inside her mind. And Lucy's eyes moved from the man back to the lake, the water. It was calling to her, so very strongly. She wanted its comfort, whatever it was in there. It felt as though it wanted to help her, save her. And she wanted that desperately. I'm just going for a swim, Lucy told the patrolman. Everything's okay. Her eyes moved back to his. They were glazed over. Mind-linking someone, or received something. Then she too felt it. The connection to her Alpha and his deep, sexy voice inside her mind. His words broke every part of her, as he announced to his pack that he had found his Luna, as had his Beta. That on the next full moon, just a few weeks away, there would be a massive celebration, the Luna ceremony to be held. Tears fell from her eyes, and she saw the border patrolman sigh as he looked at her. It's okay, she told him, even managed a small smile. Didn't even know how she did it, or where it came from. He was looking at her worriedly now. I am not going to do anything silly, I promise. No one swims here, Lucy. They won't like it. They being his Alpha and Beta. They won't like it, she thought absently. They didn't care anymore. Hadn't even had the decency to call her and tell her, to let her know when they knew. hadn't come and found her when they got back to the pack, to tell her before they told everyone else. No, she was informed just like all the rest. She loved them, thought they had cared, at least enough to tell her in private. But no, she was just their concubine, and nothing more at all. "Come in, my child. 'Tis time to meet me finally." That seductive voice inside her mind called to her. We belong together now. Lucy stripped off her clothes and stepped into the lake, ignored the border patrolman's calls to come back, felt the minute she was out past the territory border and into the human world, was chest deep in water when it happened, didn't stop, and kept going till she was barely touching the bottom. Dive deep, my child, all the way to the bottom. That's where I am. In she went, sank beneath the water, swimming down into the lake, following that voice. Nothing else mattered, not even the bitterly cold water on her skin. It was completely dark down here under the water. That song resonated louder with her, pulling at her every fiber, seducing her deeper into the darkness of the lake. She needed to breathe, tried to come back up, but then something had her in its clutches and was dragging her back down even further. "Don't fight me. I'm yours, and you are mine now." That woman's voice came to her, felt water rushing all around her, felt as though she was tumbling and spinning under the water, caught by something that was desperately trying to claim her for itself. Wanted to fight it, but then it was singing a sweet, sad song inside her mind, and here under the water, it was loud and so clear. A sad love tale of loneliness and betrayal. It was exactly how Lucy felt. "Surrender to me, child, and I will save us all. You, me, Callie, and the pups inside of us. Surrender to me." Lucy could feel her lungs burning. She needed desperately to breathe, and opened her mouth instinctively. "Yes." That voice suddenly roared with excitement inside her mind as she breathed in, dragging water into her lungs. It burned and her whole body convulsed. Water was not air. She was drowning and she knew it, had been seduced into the water to kill herself. Not dying, silly child. Being born to what we are. That voice in her mind, strong and in charge. Her whole body was struggling and fighting to breathe. Then there was light, so very bright it was blinding, and she was spinning furiously below the surface, deep down in the depth of the lake, and moving fast through the water, breathing somehow, exhilaration flooding her entire body. Until she was settled at the bottom of the lake, no longer in control of her body, but somehow able to breathe, lay there. "Who are you?" Lucy asked softly. "Alari, and we are finally one now. Sleep, my girl. I will take care of us." Then she heard that sad song resonate from her own body. Callie was awake inside her mind, happy, almost giggly in her mind, and then her wolf howled inside her mind. "Complete," she whispered to Lucy a moment later, and then lay down to sleep. She felt hot tears as her hand moved to her stomach. Her children yet unborn, unknown to anyone but her. Callie, her wolf, and Alari. "Siren. We are a siren." She heard that voice in her head. "We are a double shifter. Very special. Sleep now." Her hot tears drifted off into the cold darkness of the bottom of the lake. They no longer burned down her face in rivulets, but washed away to be unfelt anymore. allowed Alari's song to settle her to sleep, comforted by its sadness that matched her own. If they were one, it did not surprise her that Alari's song was a sad, lonely love ballad.
Chapter 1. 6 months after prologue. Rafe, point of view. He had men defending two different borders. Both the west and southern borders had rogues pushing at his men. They had come in waves over the past 12 hours. Someone had to be behind it. They knew it was coming, had been having random attacks over the past year and a bit. He was on the western border with Ian, his Delta, and Jack, his Beta, was with Alan, their Gamma, down on the southern border. His men were getting tired. 12 hours of attacks, and simultaneously at that, with barely 30 minutes between waves of rogues. The pack house was in complete lockdown and had been the whole time. Fortunately, his pack territory was large, and getting to the pack house was not an easy task. It was situated more on the western side of the pack to keep humans from coming into the territory too far. It did happen sometimes, not often, and most were escorted out with a word about this being private property. He'd had a few reports of some rogues running around the pack to the eastern border to try to get in. Rafe got the distinct feeling they were not actually trying to get into the pack, but were testing the pack's battle responses. His warrior status was one of the largest around, and nothing was getting past or into the territory that he knew of. The Black Forest pack was generally considered impregnable. It was the third largest pack around, and they helped most of the smaller packs around them when requested. He'd heard Jack sent 50 warriors to boost the eastern border from those rogues that were now off to surround that side of the pack. These rogues were acting weird, attacking and then retreating. Only a few had actually stayed and fought properly, gotten killed. Mangy, bloody critters were vicious but not stupid. They knew how to survive, likely also knew that most packs would rather divert them away than get into a full-blown battle with them. He'd brought down one himself and dragged it across into his pack to interrogate it, had 4 of his men drag its ass to the cells for a later discussion, when he wasn't so darn busy. Rafe had no idea where all these rogues had come from, or who was behind them, but it had to stop. He had to find out, deal with the problem swiftly and harshly at that. It was noted by Alan that the rogues were staying well clear of him, which meant that their master must know about his 3 mates and the protection spell they had on him. Though a few had turned into a red-blooded mist, not so many that it was helping with deterring them. This battle had started at 2 in the morning, and no one had been prepared for it. Most of the pack had been asleep. He'd woken up to multiple members of his border patrol linking to him about incoming rogues and lots of them along both borders. By the time he'd sent out a pack-wide mind link to get everyone to safety and pulled warriors to the borders to protect his pack, he'd lost several patrollers and rogues were inside the pack. They had managed to push them back and make them run from the pack's territory, but they didn't go far. It was now 2 in the afternoon, and though his warriors were lined up in ranks to match waves of attacks so that they could rest, new ones could step in. This had been going on for 12 hours now. Even he was tired, hadn't gone to bed till nearly midnight and been woken up after just 2 hours of sleep. Most of his warriors would be in the same state as he was. With little sleep, he imagined it was not a good situation to be in for any of them. The next wave was coming in, and it seemed like all of them, instead of the normal wave, called his warriors into formation and told them to hold the border. Then the battle was on, and it was a bloodied mess of wolves on wolves for a solid 20 minutes, and then the rogues that were injured or still fighting simply retreated and fled away in all directions. Whatever had happened, it was finally over. Solar, his wolf, shifted him back to stand and surveyed the dead and dying. He had plenty of injured men, though only a few had died. His border patrols mostly. They'd been unable to defend against such a large incoming number at the start of the battle. They had tried their best to deter and kill or injure to protect their pack, their loved ones. Though he had seen the rogues flee in all directions, he stayed put for another hour with 3/4 of his warriors to make sure the attack was over. The rest helped the injured to the pack hospital. Jack reported the same on his end. The rogues had just fled away in all directions, scattered away, and had not returned, set up a new patrollers, doubled the roaming patrol for now, and headed back to the pack house to get cleaned up before going to the cells to interrogate that rogue he had captured. His Luna, Melissa, seemed to have things under control inside the pack house. Everyone seemed to have made it to the pack house before she locked it down, and now it was open at his command that the battle was over. She looked right at him. He sighed. He had no answers as to what was going on. He shook his head, but did tell her he'd managed to get one alive and would extract answers from it after a shower and food. Probably should get some sleep as well. He was tired, just like all of his men were. He stood under the hot water of his shower and closed his eyes. Whoever was behind all of this was insane to trust that many rogues to do their bidding. It was a risk. He only knew of a handful of alphas crazy enough to use rogues in mass numbers, but most of them were too far away and had nothing to do with him or his pack. He ran his hand through his hair and leaned back against the wall, staring blankly at the white tiles of his shower and wondered what it was they were after. He was too large a pack to try and come in and take over. That would be a bloody slaughter for anyone. No, this person wanted something. But what? He got out and pulled on an old pair of jeans and a t-shirt. He didn't bother with shoes, headed downstairs to get food, found Jack, Alan, and Ian already there, along with several of his ranked warriors. Most would go on home to be with their families, though. Food was pushed at him by Jack. The three of them looked just as tired as he did. Alan was all sparkling clean, like Rafe was. "How many, Alan?" he asked his Gamma. The man knew exactly what he was talking about from the protective charm of his mates. "A couple dozen. They all, or most of them, knew not to come near me. Got to have been informed, so someone we know, I'm guessing, is behind it." Rafe was really hoping that was not it at all, but it did seem that way. "I don't think any of our allied packs would be stupid enough to hit us. They're all smaller in numbers and need us." "Maybe we offended someone." Jack sighed. The man was sitting at the table looking over the men eating. "Who is the question, then how?" Rafe sighed in much the same way. They didn't generally go around offending other packs or their alphas. That was just stupid. Be polite and respectful, and most, even those who were unhappy, would leave you alone. Find someone else to get what they wanted or do what they wanted. He and Jack did try their best not to offend. Hell, they did their best not to associate at all with those who were notorious and steeped in blood. Tried to always keep their pack happy and healthy. Rafe finished his food and drank a full glass of water, then stood up. It was time to go and interrogate that rogue. Hopefully it would have some answers. Unlike the last two who said nothing, were practically starving, and were half crazed. They just rambled a lot, mostly. He'd fed the bloody things in order to try and gain trust. That hadn't worked either. They had a master and would only talk to him, possibly under some sort of order, but getting an alpha order on a rogue was damned near impossible unless they were willing to be under one. Aligned to an alpha but not bound to them, not part of the pack. He walked from the pack house to the cells. It was in the northern part of the woods, just looked like a couple of doors to a storm shelter. It was in the darkest part of the forest, and had half a dozen guards on the inside. Anyone trying to get in was not coming out alive if they found this place. It was protected by his witches. Most would walk on and not even know it was there. He pulled the door open and walked down the flight of stairs into the underground bunker. It was brightly lit down here, and every cell had a camera on it. Two of his guards were sitting chatting about their families at the bottom of the stairs. They stood up and greeted him. "Alpha, has it said anything?" he asked, more out of curiosity. "A lot." Edgar nodded and shook his head. "Hasn't bloody shut up from what I can tell." That was a good sign. Perhaps Emmett had already pulled all the information out of him. He glanced at the man inside the guard station, and he was nodded at, and then buzzed on through into the actual cells. There were 24 cells down here. Some of them had their own men in them. They looked hungover, had been hauled in for drunken fighting. There were 3 of them. Rafe shook his head. Regulars to his cells, he noted. 2 more of his guards on this side of the door nodded to him. He passed them all and headed down to the back, the last cell where the rogue would be kept. Emmett was sitting on a chair. He was the pack's former beta's brother, Jack's uncle. They nodded to each other. "Well, we got ourselves a chatty bugger." He smiled up at Rafe. "Anything useful?" "No, just foul language, mostly. Got a thing for men, though. Keeps telling me he'll be enjoying my nice piece of ass." He heard the man snort in amusement. "Is he now?" Emmett smiled. "Well, if he likes it, I can give it. Not made it anymore." There was a bit of sadness in him. He lost his mate years ago and was free to have sex with whoever he wanted. "Hope he likes it rough." Emmett chuckled a moment later. The rogue in the cell was standing there staring at him, a wiry-looking fellow who didn't look underfed or malnourished, also didn't have that mangy look about him either. Yes, this creature had a master. Wasn't chained up or cuffed with silver either, he noted. "You been in there, Emmett?" "Indeed I have. He's tough, but not very strong. Can hang on to him one-handed, I can." "Open her up." Rafe nodded. The rogue was just standing watching him, hadn't said a single word since he walked in. So much for chatty. He was handed a silver blade on his way in, saw it back up a step as he entered the unit, and walked into the cell. Poor bastard was in for an afternoon of screaming if he wasn't forthcoming. "Who is your master?" "Don't got one," it shot back. "Rogues don't got no masters." "Who hired you then?" "No one. Saw a fight and just jumped on in," he told him. "You got a name?" "Yeah, called Go Fuck Yourself." He turned his eyes to Emmett questioningly, who shrugged. "You'll get a lot of that. Got a pretty potty mouth. I'll fill it for him if he likes, real good." Rafe shook his head. Didn't actually think Emmett would have sex with this creature, but who knew? He might. Might be the better option to get it to talk if it was into it, of course. Who knew? 3. Jack point of view. They got no information that was useful out of that rogue. He was tight-lipped on anything other than having a piece of his Uncle Emmett. They had left him in the cell to heal up, and they would come back again later and have another go at getting answers from him. 6 hours later, they knew why they got nothing from that rogue, as the scent of rogue evaporated off of him. He was not a rogue at all. He belonged to an alpha who he would not give up. Likely, the alpha ordered not to give anything up if captured. That counts for why they were so well controlled out there on the battlefield. Likely had several men out there directing the attack. They left him with his Uncle Emmett to dispatch of him at will. They were never getting anything out of him. Rafe was more than pissed off to find 2 of his northeastern border patrolmen reporting to him that they had been drugged and were just waking up. With the battle raging on the other side of the pack, no one had noticed 2 patrolmen not at their posts, not on the north side of the pack where it was protected by the witches. They'd gone off to see where the entry point had been and found it to be in the darkest part of the pack woods, far enough away from the witches' homes that the intruder had not triggered any of their spells. They tracked that intruder right to the back of the pack house to the basement access. Someone had gotten inside their pack house, though hadn't attacked Melissa. That was curious. What they had wanted, neither of them knew, but that intruder had been all over the pack house. They had cameras in all the corridors for just this type of thing. Not all over the pack, just in the pack house. That intruder was tall and lean and dressed all in black. He'd been stealthy and had searched all the rooms, picked the locks to every damned room, including his and the Alpha Suite. That man had been searching for something. He started on the Alpha floor as well. The only floor he hadn't touched was the ground floor. Too much risk of getting caught was their conclusion. They could not determine who he was or what he wanted, but it was too damned convenient a time for him to stroll in. This was his plan. To distract them with attacks so he could sneak into their pack house and search it undetected. There was no scent to follow, just tracks through the woods. He'd been moving fast. They could tell by the full length of his strides. They'd tracked that man right back to a road many miles away from the pack, to car tire marks. He was gone. He had spent a lot of time coming and going. He was parked more than an hour from the pack's border. By the time they realized they'd been invaded, that man was long gone. The map showed that the road led right through the mountains and out into the human world. Whoever he was knew exactly what he was doing. He had reconned them in their pack. The problem now was, did he have someone on the inside helping him out or not? He'd not spoken to anyone inside the pack house, but outside of it, who knew? He didn't want to harm them or the pack was the conclusion they came to. Well, at least not yet anyway. He could very well have taken out the Luna and half the women in the pack house as well. This could well be just a prelude to something more sinister later on. They were going to have to search every damn room that man had been in to find out if he'd left anything behind. He could well have been planting bugs or cameras inside their pack house. Who the hell knew? Alan pulled his mates in to magically search the pack house for anything out of the ordinary, anything that man could have left behind at Rafe's request. Those 3 witches were thorough indeed. They'd actually spent a bit of time in the Alpha Suite and Jack's for that matter. They annoyed both Melissa and Maria, their mates, who stated point-blankly that they didn't want those women in their bedrooms. Both he and Rafe ignored their annoyance. This was a security breach, and those rooms needed searching. Though it had started one hell of an argument between Melissa and Rafe over it. She was furious about her personal space being invaded, it seemed. He didn't know why. It was also Rafe's personal space, and he was damned certain he wanted it searched. That man who had traipsed through their pack house could be laying traps or poison anything inside all the rooms. Melissa didn't seem to care about that, just cared that there was a witch in her suite and didn't want that. Well, there were 3 of them in there. 5 minutes after Aaliyah had been in there, both Hannah and Gianna walked right into the room and shut the door behind them. He'd looked at Alan, who shrugged. Cryptic as always, was his only statement. They had come out and looked at Melissa for a moment, who started yelling at them that they had no right to be in her room. They glanced at Rafe, and he stated, "A search is necessary. She can deal with it. Continue on." He watched them make their way right to his beta suite and shut that door too. All the Alpha Unit suites were treated this way, though curiously, they had not gone into one room on the floor. All 3 of them had looked at the door and then just turned and walked away. It gained not only his attention, but Rafe's as well. The cameras had shown that the room had been accessed like all the others had. It had been Lucy's room when she'd been here. He hadn't seen her in 6 months now, and it still troubled him. Likely always would, though he'd not felt her death. He didn't believe she was dead. He had never felt her sever ties with him, but he couldn't feel her anymore. Occasionally, he tried to pull on that tether to her just out of curiosity, and got nothing. She was likely too far away for him to feel it. It made not just him, but his wolf Flair sad not to feel her. They both missed her. Both felt responsible for her disappearance. No one really went into her room other than he and Rafe, and only occasionally. There was nothing in there anymore. Her mother, Addison, had come and collected her belongings after he'd informed her of what had happened. Hadn't said anything at all to him or Rafe. She just turned up with her pack beta and gamma at the gate and announced she was here to collect Lucy's things. He nor Rafe had stopped her. How could they when he and Rafe were the reason Lucy was gone? She'd not even spoken to him, had gotten out of the car and glared right at him, snapped out an order at Rafe. Her Luna aura rolled right out of her, showing her anger. They knew why she was here. Both of them had taken her to Lucy's room and she'd shut them out, packed up Lucy's belongings, and then just left as quickly as she had come. The room had been cleaned, and when Melissa had questioned Rafe about another Luna in their pack laying down the law, which was what Addison had done, barely a week after Melissa had arrived here, he'd told her about Lucy being his and Jack's lover for the past year. That had not gone down so well. The woman had tried to gut the room. Thankfully, his head Omega had gone to Rafe and told him what the Luna's orders were, and he'd vetoed it. That had caused a fight with Melissa. She had no access to that room at all. Even now, she was not allowed in there. It was Lucy's room, and not only was Jack hoping that one day they would get closure on her, so was Rafe, but till then, the room would stay as it was. He still felt comforted by going in there. It was weird. The woman wasn't here anymore, but that room made him relax. Though her scent was gone and all her things were gone, there was just something about it that drew him, just as Lucy herself had. Rafe was of the same opinion about the room. It calmed him when stressed out. Both of them used it to sleep in sometimes when their mates insisted on going home to visit their family. He was curious as to why the witches didn't search it, curious as to why they didn't even open the door. When he really thought about it, he'd never seen them go near it for that matter. And they did occasionally sleep in here in the Gamma Suite with Alan, though not often. Usually they liked to stay out in their cabin in the woods. Alan usually slept out there with them. He was only in the pack house if they told him to be. The search took all night long, and they came up with nothing. Whoever that man was, he was searching for something, not hiding something. But what? No one knew. Not even the witches for that matter, though Hannah did state they would meditate on it and see what they could come up with. Chapter 4. Rafe Point of View. It was a few years later that they would see anything along the lines of that massive attack on their pack. He had been requested to go down and help a small gypsy pack only to see a very similar attack style being led. He knew it was Alpha Victor of the Bloodless Moon Pack now. When Rafe recalled to mind the footage of that intruder within their pack, he could see it now. The one that had slipped in and out of his pack fitted Victor's build perfectly. He was also a man that traveled with a small band of rogues. He was known to use them for battle. It all made sense to him now. Rafe even knew what that man had been searching for. He had hit the Alpha floor first, and for a very good reason. He was looking for Lucy, their missing concubine. Clearly, the man had no idea she was not with them anymore when he'd come to their pack. He had been looking to take her all for himself. The battle here in New Moon Pack raged on much like it had back in their home pack for hours, them being distracted, going from one border to another. His gamma was all over the place. He could see the deaths being wrought everywhere that man was traveling about. He knew he would be just reaching out and latching onto any wolf that would be considered the enemy. His three mates, though, those witches, had completely surprised him by strolling through the pack house and announcing they were coming, then simply got in the car along with their mate. The waves started coming in, and when most of the attack happened, north of them they needed more men out there where the incoming were in the hundreds. All available men went. It was just he and Jack now down here. He'd sent Ian off to help. He had no choice. But then waves once again started coming from the south. Victor was out to get that young gypsy princess for himself. They had no actual proof of what he wanted, no solid evidence, but the way that Hannah and her sisters had surrounded that child just 14 years old told him all he needed to know. He and Jack had no choice but to leave those witches to defend themselves, defend all the women and children. They needed to take the fight to the incoming. Everyone here was on the move, and it was a bloody slaughter at that. No one escaped injury. There were just too many incoming. Though when Hannah let all her power loose and blew that pack house's roof clean off, it was over. Everyone just stopped mid-battle, and then the enemy were in full retreat, though for how long he had no idea. He didn't even know why the witches had blown part of the pack house up at first. His eyes were on his gamma as he ran at full speed for his mates, but the tether to Hannah was there. She was all right. She had just likely pulled all three of their powers into herself and was exhausted now. He moved his eyes about and spied Jack coming this way, hugged that man to him. He was covered in wounds, as was Rafe himself, but they would heal. He held on to him for a long moment, glad to know and feel he was all right. They'd gotten separated during the battle. He chuckled at a young Alpha Connor's questioning look as they hugged each other, let him know they were a dual-reigning pack, told him to drop on by and he'd show him how it was done. He looked a little more than confused, but then he just nodded. He'd already heard from Alan that his mate stated when the young man takes over, ally the pack to him and his. It would be good for them and worth a bit of a giggle over the years. They found something highly amusing about young Connor, but wouldn't part with what it actually was, keeping that to themselves. Who knew what they saw? They never spoke plainly, always cryptic. Not even Alan claimed to understand them half the time. It didn't surprise him that the Gypsy Princess and the current Luna attached themselves to him out of the packs that were there. He was the strongest, and with the way those witches had brought themselves here and protected that girl, It was likely the safest place for her to be. Though he wasn't the pack that got the most gypsies to take back to the pack. That would be one Alpha Rider of Whistling Woods pack over in Wyoming, which got its name from the sound the wind made when it raced through the woods. That man had managed to collect nearly half of the remaining gypsies. Though he could see that most of them knew the man, he was older, much closer to their own now deceased Alpha's age. Though he had lost his mate and heir in childbirth, it was rumored she herself had been a gypsy. If that was true, that would be why they all went to him. He had not been granted a second-chance mate, declined to take a chosen from what he could tell, so he was continuing to reign by himself. He was 75 now, though he didn't look much past 40. Rafe only got 10 of the remaining gypsies. He was not particularly concerned. He would, however, accept and protect those who chose him and Jack. He'd seen quite a few of them look up at him and then look at Jack, frown quite deeply and stare at them, then just turn and walk away. Perceptive were the gypsies. They could tell if they liked someone just from looking at them. He didn't understand what they were seeing. He and Jack were well liked by their pack. Jack shook his head. He didn't understand it either. He'd heard Gianna sigh a little heavily and looked at her curiously. She'd simply stare at him for a moment and then Jack too, but said nothing at all. Whatever it was she knew, she wasn't going to tell them either. He saw her walk away to sit with Hannah, who was awake but leaning on Alan. She looked tired to him. She didn't so much as even look to him or Jack, but he saw the look go between the sister and her simply nod just once. Oh, yes. They knew why. Something was off, and he wondered if it was the struggle between him, Jack, and their mate. They were always arguing. They just couldn't see eye to eye about the most important thing in his life, or Jack's for that matter. There was difficulty and resentment between the four of them that ran the pack. Well, technically, he and Jack ran the pack. Melissa did attend to the Luna duties, but Maria did not. She was not interested in being that involved in the running of the pack, just something else that was annoying for him and Jack, for that matter. As their mates to a dual-reigning pack, that woman should have a desk right next to her twin sister and be a second Luna to the pack even. But no, she would not. They headed home to find, much to his annoyance, both Melissa and Maria insisting on going home to their father's pack. It was not the right time to be doing so, with new distraught pack members to be initiated in and her guidance and help needed. She'd stated, "It's time we went home. You know this, would have known before you offered to help the pack. Alan can help them with their emotions. Isn't that what he's for?" He'd wanted to argue with her, seeing as they had lost pack members themselves and their own, needed their Luna to help them, support them, and be there for them during their time of grief. But he had 10 gypsies standing behind him that needed him. He had simply muttered, "Do what you want, Melissa. You always do anyway," and walked into his office without looking back. He hated that their mate bond was so strained all the time, that she didn't even seem concerned about the fact that it was. She had told him once, "Well, if you just let me have everything I want, it wouldn't be." He knew that was not what it was about. He did not deny her anything, ever. The only request he ignored and would not consider was removing Jack and no longer being a dual-reigning pack. She wanted Jack to take a step back and only be a beta. She also didn't want him hanging around with Jack anymore. It was never going to happen, and he'd told her as much. Jack had been born on the same day as the man, got their wolves together. They were not just best friends, not just an alpha and a beta. They were bonded and connected in a way that he loved, a way that she hated and would not accept. Something she should have as his mate, should want him to be happy, should want Jack herself. Even Jack's mate should want him as well as Jack, but it was not like that. Their mate bonds were not what they expected them to be at all. They'd always imagined one mate between the two of them. He didn't mind having two between the two of them either. Just get a bigger bed and make a bigger suite. But that hadn't happened either. Nope, they were still in separate rooms with separate mates, even though they were twins. It was annoyingly frustrating at the best of times. It made him furiously mad at other times, and on the odd occasion he just wanted to slap his own mate. He had not, but when she said horrid things or was cruel on purpose to Jack, he wanted to punish her so bad. She was like a selfish, spoiled brat sometimes that needed a good hard smack back into reality. Solar had snarled at her a few times with her words, and she had blinked more than shocked. She seemed almost afraid of Solar and then had just backed off, gone home, in fact, on the days when Solar was displeased with her and showed it, or the next day, if it was late at night. She told him, "I'll come back when you love me again," and just took her sister and left the pack to go home to her father. One day he imagined she'd go home and just not come back at all.
Chapter 5. 6.5 years after leaving the Black Forest pack. Lucy's point of view. Lucy lay in her bed, staring at her beautiful twin boys, so very precious to her. Alari and Callie were excited. They believed their boys would have their first shift soon. They were only 6 years old, though, and Lucy didn't think this would happen. She'd not gotten Callie till she was 18, 2 years after she was supposed to, and Alari had not arrived until she was 21. Wolves generally didn't shift until their humans were 16, and she'd been a later shifter herself, though Alari told her most sirens were born as sirens, and she had to wait because of what she was. That, to her inherited knowledge, half sirens only got their siren through loss and sadness. She had not thought she would be allowed to be born at all, but had been there in the back of her mind, always watching on, but unable to interact or communicate. Lucy did not really understand it at all. She could shift and let Callie run free out under the full moon into the woods, and she could shift into Alari and let her swim in the lake, and it got a little noisy inside her mind at times. But mostly now, when one or the other wanted out of her, she had little control over it. It was always a concern to leave her precious children alone, when the shifter side of her clawed its way out and left them alone and vulnerable. But Alari and Callie never went far away, and her boys, they were very special. Just looking at them, anyone in the shifter world would be able to tell. She could feel already how much power they held. She herself had been an alpha female once. Well, still was, she guessed. Had gone from an alpha to a concubine. Watched as both their eyes opened at the same time, as they both stretched and then yawned in the exact same manner, so very connected to each other. One had the deepest, darkest blue eyes you'd ever see, and the other deep, dark green like the depths of a forest. Saw them both smile up at her. "Mama," they said in unison. Lucy touched her lips to both their foreheads one after the other. "My precious boys." She smiled down at them, and they both giggled up at her. The sound sent a shiver down her spine, at the slight melodic sound of their laughter. That siren part of them could already be heard when they laughed. Alari loved to hear it. Up they all got. It was a school day today, breakfast in their bellies. Lucy stepped outside the hut to have her morning coffee. She could see the pack from here, just barely, but it was there at the other end of the lake. She had not gone far. This part of the lake, though, belonged to the humans, but Alari had claimed it as her own, as it was where she was born. She was an alpha-blooded siren, and that lake was now hers as far as she was concerned. The twins themselves had been born right here inside this one-room hut. She'd never returned to the Black Forest pack. Didn't want to see them with their mates, and didn't want the boys being upset that their fathers loved another, or not understanding why they weren't with them or heirs to their father's pack. Which they would not be. Not when they were born to their father's concubine and not their mates. Didn't want them to feel like bastard children, who would likely be shunned by the Luna and the Beta's mate. No, she did not want them to feel that. Here was better. Close to home if something happened, but not so close as to warrant attention from the Luna and her sister. Part of her wondered if they had children now. It was likely. It had been a long time, and most did not wait on producing an heir to the pack. Although her boys would be older and should be first in line, those two wolves over there, they had no idea about the twins. She had never told them and was going to keep it that way. There was no need for her to go back, not when they had mates. Lucy hadn't gone home to her mother and father either. Not after it was her father who had tried to mate her off to a sick, twisted alpha, then called her foul names when she'd refused to go with him, had run for Rafe and Jack to be safe from him, who her father had then sent her to be a concubine, had washed his hands of her. The Nightfall Pack was not her home anymore either, and her little brother Thatcher would take over soon enough. He'd be 19 by now, and who knew at what age their father Orion would allow the boy to take over. She hadn't been home since she was 20, hadn't even visited after being sent away. As she stood staring out across the lake at the pack, Lucy didn't even know if she was still a part of that pack or not. She never felt any mind link from the pack to her, was likely too far away for that to work anyway. She'd also not had a single moment of contact with anyone from the pack since Alari had come along. Didn't even know how long she'd been down there on the bottom of the lake. Had simply emerged from the water right here in front of this fisherman's hut. It had been run down and looked like no one used it, so they had claimed it for herself. No human had ever come to kick her out, and so she stayed. Had fixed the place up over time, and now it was a nice little home. Small by all means, but they were okay with that. Her eyes moved along the pack territory border, and Callie was suddenly up inside her mind. Her hearing was attuned to the sound of lots of movement. It was all around her, or soon would be, she realized. Stepped hastily back inside her hut and closed the door, a feeling of foreboding all around her. Alari moved forward and started to sing softly. Both boys were suddenly at her side, holding her hands. They knew something was wrong. The song Alari was singing was one to divert anything away from them, not to draw them in. Soft and subtle, likely barely audible to anyone. But she was a powerful alpha siren, and she used all her instincts. Lucy twitched the curtain ever so slightly and looked at the edge of the lake. Following the shoreline when Alari stopped singing, and there, she saw wolves moving en masse in the direction of the pack. There was no way to warn them while Alari was in control, and her only thought was to protect her precious boys. An attack was imminent on the Black Forest Pack. What could she do? Nothing was what. She'd not been back in 6.5 years. She'd seen and felt the occasional rogues go by. Alari had dispatched one or two herself, and in a way that had shocked both her and Callie, but not the boys, it seemed. Whatever they were, they understood that they were both wolf and siren, and accepted it without issue. Such sweet little boys till one got angry, that was. Already little Rafe had an alpha's temperament, and little Jack was much the same as well. "Mama?" she heard them say in unison. Lucy squeezed their little hands in hers for reassurance. This was not the first time she'd watched on as the pack had been attacked. But it had gotten worse of late. There were rogues attacking the pack in larger groups over the past year. But today it was different. These wolves were all in human form. They were not rogues. This today, whatever it was about, was a pack attacking another pack. A deadly game. Callie was anxious, and Alari finally stopped singing. It was barely past sunrise. Who the hell was stupid enough to attack in broad daylight, and so close to the human world? The Black Forest Pack was not a small pack either. One of the largest there was, but from what she could tell, so was the pack attacking, and they were moving with a purpose. "Stay inside," Lucy told her boys, turned and squatted down to look at the both of them. "I mean it." "Are they in trouble, Mama?" both boys asked, worry etching in their words. "Maybe. Alari and Callie are going to go and see. Please, boys, stay inside. Do not go outside, not for any reason, no matter what you hear." Are they in trouble could only mean their fathers. She had never mentioned them to the boys, but it seemed they already knew. Yes, Mama. They both looked worried. They both knew what to do if she didn't return, but she would. Stepped outside after making sure the boys were safe and out of sight. Turned her eyes to the pack at the far end of the lake. Stripped off her clothes. Alari was very fast in the water. They only needed to get within mind-linking range of the nearest border patrol. Ran down the jetty and dived into the cold water. Alari shifted to her siren form, and she was swimming with a fury towards the other end of the lake. Callie was still anxious. Her anxiety was filtering into her and Alari both. If it was war, they might be needed. As much as Alari had kept them safe and hidden over the years, even from their own pack, today might be the day her Alpha and Beta saw her for what she truly was. A double shifter with incomparable abilities. Strong and fast, stealthy under the water. And she, Alari, was deadly when it came to protecting what was hers. Showed no mercy. She swam close to the surface. She had caught up easily to the advancing pack. They were not running, saving their energy for the upcoming battle. Shot ahead of them, a little deeper in the water, so the water would not ripple with her movement and give away her position to any that happened to look towards the lake. Reaching out with her mind, and there it was, the connection to her pack. Long ago abandoned, but not rejected. Slipped up to the surface and focused upon the border. Looked at the patrolling wolf and established a mind link to him. Saw his wolf's head snap right up. War is coming now. Eastern border. Maybe 30 minutes out. Tell the Alpha. Her words were clear and precise, and urgency filled every word she spoke. Knew by the way that wolf looked around. They had no idea where it had come from or who, but also knew he would do his job. No one wanted war. This border was the furthest from the pack house. It would take them almost an hour to get here, even in wolf form. It was that way on purpose to keep unwanted humans finding the pack, and to keep young wolves from unwittingly strolling into the human world, especially the newly shifted. Alari moved closer to the pack, just her eyes above the surface, watching and waiting. It took only a minute for her to hear their Alpha's deep, rich voice inside their minds, full of authority as it came down a pack-wide mind link. His voice sent a shiver of pleasure and sadness through the three of them. They'd not heard his voice in years. It brought both pain and a longing to them instantly. They waited in the water and watched, not willing to reveal themselves unless necessary. Their boys must be kept hidden and safe. They were too young yet to protect themselves from the dangers that might befall them due to their mixed breeding, their alpha blood. Although Alari and Callie had no doubt they would be amazingly strong, they were still vulnerable at this time, not yet shifted, and had not gained the full powers of wolf and siren. Both Alari and Callie agreed the boys would have a full union of their two species, likely to be the first of their kind, and unlikely to be accepted, might be hunted and killed. So hidden is what they were. Patrolmen were gathering along the edge of the border, a dozen of them. They were not going to be a match for the 100 or so she could see now standing at the ready. Lucy watched through Alari's eyes as a tall, blonde-haired man stepped forward. He was the Alpha leading the war. Alpha Victor Sampson of the Bloodless Moon Pack. Lucy huffed. She even knew that sick bastard from her past, one of her father's poorly chosen allies, but not an ally to this pack. No, Rafe and Jake did not like this man. They also knew neither did she. He was a brute, and used underhanded tactics and rogues to do his dirty work. Her eyes moved back to the pack's territory. Those patrolmen were all going to die. She could do nothing to save them at this point. Hoped and prayed that more warriors would come soon. Finally, there was movement, though not many. Those closest to the border, she supposed. Another dozen. Slipped beneath the surface and moved closer until she was inside the pack's territory. Felt the connection to the place and closed her eyes. All three of them sighed. It had been a long time since they were home. Felt almost comforting. Probably would have been, if not for the situation brewing on land. She stayed beneath the water's surface, heard the battle begin. It was loud and aggressive. Slipped above the surface and saw a massacre happening. 100 or more wolves and one alpha, and his alpha unit all in wolf form now, killing all those trying to defend the border. Her alpha and his unit were not there yet, but the howling in the distance said it all. They were on their way, and it was not just him and his unit. It was likely all he had. "Alari, please," Callie whined at her. "Wait, Callie. We need to wait for the right moment," she stated calmly and matter-of-factly, like the slaughter she was seeing before her meant nothing to her. Lucy could feel a cold indifference coming from Alari. They were not her kind. She had no attachment to them, or not really. She was here to help, but would not out herself unless absolutely necessary. Callie herself was itching to be out, to help her fellow wolves. She was an alpha wolf and trained to fight for many years. She knew she could help. But even Lucy knew that Callie would be no match for that many. "He's coming, Callie. They're coming." She tried to reassure her wolf, who was now prowling around anxiously inside her mind, wanting to aid the pack. Knowing her true nature, she actually could. They all could, but only when Alari allowed them to. She was in full control and would be, even when the actual time came. It would be Alari who dealt out the damage. Something no one around these parts had ever seen before. No one left alive to report it anyway. Alari never left one injured to take back the knowledge of their existence. "Here they come," she told Callie, seeing wolves from their pack finally racing through the woods and launching themselves into the fight. It was brutal and bloody. Rafe's big black wolf, Solar, was in the lead with his alpha unit right behind him. Jack's wolf, Flare, just as large and impressive as the alpha wolf himself. One might even think he was an alpha wolf, if one didn't know them. Was the same size, just pure white instead of black. Alari turned her eyes away from them, as pain touched Lucy and Callie at seeing the two of them, for the first time since that dreadful day, when their entire world had fallen apart, and a deep-seated loneliness had etched into their very souls. Never to be theirs again, and they themselves would never be anyone's. Didn't want anyone else. Could never have another. It was too late for them. "Let it go. I need to focus," Alari demanded of them. It had been their heartbreak and sadness that had allowed Alari to come forward that day, and she alone could push past it and console them. That battle raged on. Victor was winning, it seemed. His men were all working in groups of 4, taking down Rafe's warriors like precision alpha units. "Please," Callie whined loudly, scratching at their minds, desperately trying to get out. Alari had a firm hold on all of them. She was the strongest of the 3. Could hold both of them off if she so chose to. "It is time," Alari finally agreed, lifted herself waist-high out of the water, using her tail to balance along the lake's sandy bottom, and took in a long, deep breath. "First, Callie, we will separate and then slaughter together." "Agreed," Callie roared inside her mind, ready to join in on the battle. "Lucy?" "Do it." Lucy agreed also. This would out them to not just their pack, but the attacking pack as well. Victor would surely see them, and that vicious bastard would want them for sure. But Rafe was going to lose this battle, it seemed. Alari's hands flattened on the surface of the water, and she took in a very long and agonizingly painful breath. Filled her lungs until not 1 ounce more of air could be brought in. It was excruciating. Her eyes felt hot, and Callie and Lucy knew they were glowing. She focused on the battle that was raging. "Alpha, step your men back now," they roared down the mind link, with all 3 of them speaking in unison. All of their alpha aura flooding down the link at him and his wolf. Her lungs were burning as they held in that air. Saw his wolf Solar turn and look right at her. Allari did not look all that different from Lucy from the waist up. He should recognize her to some degree. Her authority, however, was unmatched, and he did listen. All his wolves suddenly retreated back, fled almost. Her words had come with a deadliness, a threat and warning in her tone. Victor's wolves stilled, not knowing what happened. The moment their pack's wolves were clear, they finally released that breath she had been holding in, causing them to be in agony themselves. A massive sonic whistle emitted from her. It was long and high-pitched. It was aimed right at Victor and his wolves. Saw him and all of them being force-shifted by the sheer pain she was causing them. To their wolves' super-sensitive hearing. Not to mention she was rolling all their alpha aura down the sound as well, intensifying it, tripling what a normal siren could do. Did not stop when they were all shifted back, simply turned her sights on the closest to them, and dropped the pitch to a deadly subsonic whistle. Watching on as the wolves started screaming and actively holding their heads. Blood was starting to pour out of their noses and ears. Then they were falling down one by one as she took direct aim at each one in turn. They were dying before their very eyes. Not only were those wolves dying, they were turning towards her, drawn to her. She could hear Victor yelling at his men to cover their ears, but that would not help them as much as he thought. And only those far enough away for their call to be fated to them would not be drawn to her. 1/3 of his men down and dying, and Allari was done with her call. Her eyes moved right to Victor's. He was a savage man, who Lucy had hated even as a teenager. A good ally to have. He loved a killing field. Her father's most trusted and reliant allied Pax Alpha. How he got to be allies with that man, she did not know. He was staring right at her, and Lucy wondered if he recognized her after all these years. She hoped not. She had nearly been forcibly mated off to that man, all because her father had been mad at her for sleeping with Rafe and Jack when they had gone to her pack for a visit. Did not care for him to recognize her, to be honest. Shifted them to their other form, their true form, a fully united wolf and siren species, just like the boys would be one day. Something no one had ever seen before or gotten to tell tales of. She was a large, partially humanized wolf who stood tall like a pure-blooded alpha wolf, who could be half-shifted to his beast. She had no fur, still had Allari's opalescent scales, a hairless, half-shifted female alpha wolf with the appearance of a siren's skin. She stood there, staring that man down. Her eyes were all black like Allari's, with iridescent green irises that shined Callie through as well. All 3 of them stood, staring at the evil man in their true form. Stepped towards the battlefield and did something only rarely done, and only something a pure-blooded alpha siren should be able to do. Something that for them, they needed to be united to do, because they were a half-breed, pulled on the alpha in all of them to do. Raised their hands up, and along with them came the water of the lake, all their fingers outstretched, separating the water into many large drops. Then they snapped their hands out towards Victor and his remaining army. The water shot across the battlefield at their enemy in 100 razor-sharp icicles. slicing through and embedding into those wolves before falling away as water once more. "Now, Alpha!" she roared to her own Alpha, and the battle began again. She stood and watched on from the water, pain ripping through all of them at the power they had used, had to let go of their form and reverted back to Alari, collapsed down into the water, felt like their head was splitting open. Their eyes, however, never left the battlefield. They were done. A one-time deal, so to speak.
Chapter 6. Rafe Point of View. He was sitting in his office, and once again he felt annoyed and partially hollowed out at the same time. He couldn't understand it. The women were bloody twins, and so very close, but neither of them would allow he or Jack to share them. It hurt every time they refused him. He also knew it hurt Jack, his beta, every time as well. Their connection to each other had always been so very strong, gotten their wolves on the same day. Hell, they did everything together, including sex with women, had shared damn near every woman they'd ever had. But their own mates wouldn't allow it, and it was hurting them every day. Jack had tried to let it go years ago now. He had stopped asking his mate to let he and Rafe share her. Rafe, on the other hand, had alpha needs that could not be sated completely by just him and his mate. She alone was not enough for him. Should be, but wasn't. He and Melissa had a screaming match just this morning about it, in fact, up on the alpha floor in the hallway. Jack and his mate Maria had tried to separate them. Maria was no more interested in Rafe touching her than Melissa was Jack touching her. It caused him actual pain, always had and likely always would. He wanted both women, and he knew so did Jack. Jack had dragged him downstairs and into the Alpha's office. "Just let it go, Rafe. It's never going to happen." "It needs to, Jack," he snapped. "I'm sick of this. They are our mates. I don't understand it." "I know, but it's been years now, Rafe. We're not going to sway them." Rafe knew that his beta was right, but it didn't stop the hurt or the constant hollow feeling he had in his chest. That was just starting to feel as though it was going to swallow him alive. It felt like his life was being slowly, agonizingly slowly at that, ripped away from him. He had no idea how much more of this he could take. He loved Melissa. She was his mate, and touching her, pleasing her, and being with her meant the world to him in one hand. But on the other hand, he hated her for denying him what he needed. He had tried to explain it to her and to Maria for that matter, how not only he felt, but how Jack also felt, that there was a connection so strong between them they needed to be in each other's love lives to feel whole. His own mate glared at him and called him all manner of names right to his face. Alpha. His attention was drawn away from his own painful thoughts by the urgency and tinge of fear coming down the mind link. He automatically opened the mind link to Jack so he too could hear what was going on. "Attack coming on the eastern border. I don't see anything, but... I believe what I was told is true." "What were you told? Explain," he demanded the eastern patroller. There was only the human world out there. Not a place for an attack at this hour of the day. The sun was up and all. "A mind link. Not sure from who, though. Female. Didn't recognize the voice, but her urgency was clear. She believed it to be war." "Keep me apprised. I'll send warriors now. Be careful." His eyes met Jack's as an uneasy feeling settled on him. This is what they had been fearing for a while now. Their pack had been getting systematically attacked over the last year and a half. Rogue wolves, mostly, testing their borders and response times. Both he and Jack believed it was a prelude to being a full pack-on-pack attack, though what they were after or who they were was still yet to be seen. Though they did not know who it was, he and Jack had their suspicions. War was coming, and today, it appeared, was the day. He connected himself to the entire pack, a full pack-wide mind link, made sure every available tether he could feel was linked to him. He sent out an alert for all the women not warrior ranked and all the children to come to the pack house for safety. For every warrior he had to head for the eastern border. War with another pack was here. He was standing in his office, a frown on his face. "Jack?" he half whispered to the man and reached out to let him feel a link to them. Very odd, Rafe. I can't place that at all. Not familiar. I don't know it either. It was an odd feeling to be attached to a mind that felt loud and fuzzy, crowded even. He also didn't recognize it at all, yet it was part of his pack, came from the east as well. Melissa and Maria appeared in his office doorway, wide-eyed and worried-looking. Keep everyone inside, lock it down, he told Melissa, tilting her face up to him. Despite their constant arguing, he did love her. He leaned down and kissed her softly on the mouth. Stay inside, he told her. Then he left to head for the eastern border. It didn't take long for his patrolman to report to him that there was an Alpha and his unit with at least 100 warriors standing outside the pack border, stating he did not know the Alpha. He told him he and his unit were on the way along with all their warriors. Rafe knew those patrolmen were outnumbered and likely not to survive the battle. If that Alpha did not wait for him to arrive to take him down, the sheer volume of men he brought with him said it all. He was in this battle to take over the pack or out to destroy them. A still unknown enemy at this time. He wondered if he would be able to talk the man and his wolf down out of the war and battle that was about to start. Where both of them were going to lose people, he wondered if perhaps he could come to some sort of agreement with this Alpha. It might be possible, depending on exactly what that Alpha wanted. The fighting was already underway when he got there. His wolf, Solar, launched himself into the fighting, though it seemed, even with his men well trained, they were outmatched. This Alpha and his warriors did not fight like other packs. They were attacking and bringing down his well-trained men. 4-on-1, they were killing his warriors quickly and efficiently. It was a bloodbath out here on the edge of the pack. Solar and Flare, he and Jack's wolves, were trying to get to that bastard's alpha wolf. They didn't recognize the wolf, hadn't seen it before, but it seemed to be impossible. He had several units in front of him, and if even one of those men fell, another from somewhere else appeared to take his place. They were eradicating without mercy Rafe's men, one by one, and seemed to be barely losing any of his own at all. "We're losing!" Jack's voice shot down the mind link. I know. But his wolf did not stop fighting. None of them would. They had to protect the pack's women and children, their mates, his Luna. Alpha, step your men back now, roared into his mind. So much power rolled with it. Solar actually bowed his damn head. Whoever it was that weird link he'd felt before. The urgency and demand from her, and it was definitely a female voice, had him actually obeying, and he sent out a full retreat order to 50 feet. Everyone went, including him and his Alpha unit. His wolf lifted his head to look and see where she was, who she was, and noticed the woman in the water. Not a wolf, he realized. He saw her stance, and the way she was solely focused on the enemy. Rafe, what's going on? In the lake, Jack, he shot back, knowing that the man and his wolf would look. There was a very pale, opalescent scaled creature with long hair draped over the front of her body. She had pure black eyes that radiated a slightly bluish color, almost as if they were glowing. Distinctly female, it had all the curves of a woman. It was standing there in the water. She seemed to be on his side. She'd called him Alpha. What is it? Hell if I know. Called me Alpha, though. She's a pack member? Jack asked, sounding shocked. Neither of them had seen anything like her before. Then the sound that suddenly issued from that creature hurt his wolf's ears, and Solar snarled and snapped his teeth in its direction in response to the pain. He wanted nothing more than to race down there and rip its head off for the pain it was causing his wolf. It was horrid. Rafe, look to the enemy, Jack shot to him. They were all being force-shifted by the pain of the sound directed at them. Thank the goddess that thing is on our side, Rafe sent back. The pitch changed and he was in less pain, so was his wolf. But he watched as those closest to the creatures started dropping like flies. Blood was pouring from them. Some of them were actively turning towards the creature and even moving towards it, like the sound was calling to them, drawing those wolves to her. When it stopped, a third of the attacking pack was dead or dying, laying on the ground, bleeding out. Solar turned his attention to the Alpha in question. He was standing with his hands over his ears, Tall with more lean muscle than bulk, that blonde hair was nearly white, a dead giveaway. He knew that man, Victor Sampson. He had seen him with some of his other allied packs. His suspicions were now confirmed. He'd thought as much, though with no actual proof couldn't do anything about it. He hadn't even seen the man over the years down at Nightfall. He'd not seemed bothered by Rafe or Jack, had been respectful, wouldn't say polite, always asked after Lucy. Their only statement was she's fine. Victor was a complete brute of a man, and Rafe would not align his pack with that man and his bloodless moon pack. They were a bunch of thieving, murderous bastards who loved to slaughter everything, even when the fighting was over. He let his men torture the survivors of the battles. He was just plain cruel and sadistic. His attention moved back to the creature in the lake, watched it shift and become something else entirely. It looked like a half-shifted wolf, but with scales, not fur. But those black eyes now held green, glowing irises. "What the hell is it?" his whole Alpha unit asked him. Rafe was really looking at it now. It was not finished yet, saw it building up water around its hands. "I don't know what it is. It's on our side," was his reply. "Rafe?" A separate private link from Jack. "Lucy? It looks like Lucy." Rafe could see it a little. He'd not seen that wolf in over half a decade, though. She'd run off and left, presumed dead, drowned herself the day he and Jack came home with their mates in that very lake. Rafe couldn't tell, not really, though he knew without a doubt Lucy was a wolf. Whatever that thing was not a wolf, and the power it held had made his own alpha wolf bow its head. Then water spears, was how he thought of them, were flying through the air towards the enemy. It took down a lot more of those fighting for Victor. "Now, Alpha!" The creature roared at him as it collapsed into the water. His wolf let out a battle cry and the fighting restarted. This time, though, he had more men than Victor. He still had warriors joining the battle, those that were unable to keep up with him and his unit or his elite warriors. His numbers were still increasing in size. He watched as Victor called a retreat to his remaining men when there were about 30 left. He knew he could no longer win. It was now a losing battle for him. Rafe did not send his men after that man. He'd already lost too many today. He would not lose any more for a hunt and kill mission. Though he could feel several of his men wanted revenge. They would have lost family members out here today. Not just parents, but children as well. Many of his elite warriors were old enough to have grown children, some grown grandchildren. His eyes moved back to the lake only to see the creature disappear. "Lucy?" He tried to reach out to it via the mind link. It was severed as violently as the last time, and he could not re-establish any connection to it. He was trying to maintain any sort of connection with the female creature. But the minute it was gone from the pack's territory, the tether to it was gone as well. "Rafe?" It was Jack again. "I don't know," he sighed. "Cut me clean off, both link and tether, the second it left the pack territory." Rafe shifted back to his human form and he headed for the lake. There was no trace of it, whatever it was. He could not see it. Whatever it was, it lived there in the lake, somewhere deep down in the depths, he supposed. Jack was standing beside him now. Do you suppose it could be Lucy? Likely the thing that killed Lucy. Rafe sighed. She went in and never came out, Jack. No body was ever found, remember? Maybe because... Lucy was a wolf, Jack. Rafe turned from the lake. Whatever or whoever it was, it had been or was a part of his pack. It had a direct and clear line to his patrolmen and to him. His eyes moved to the bloody battlefield. We gotta get the shit cleaned up before any bloody humans stroll through on their way to the lake. Find me a live one. That was Victor Sampson. What? That's not good, Rafe. That man's a monster. Agreed. And though he lost a lot today, he'll be back with more. We need to prepare for another attack, and likely soon. He's the type to go gather and regroup. No time will be given for us to recover. Agreed. I'll get Hannah and her sisters out here to clean this shit show up quickly. Already here. He heard a female voice, emotionless as always. Both he and Jack turned and looked at her. When'd you get here? Been here the whole time. You want full cleanup, Alpha, or just those pricks over there? She and her 2 sisters stood casually looking over the battlefield, dressed in simple pale blue hooded dresses. He knew their backs would be bare, a full hallowed circle that showed off what he could only think of as their coven markings. It was identical on all of them, moons that ran down their spines. Their feet were also bare. They never wore shoes. They liked to feel the ground under their feet always, connected them to their Mother Earth. They were the 3 witches allied to this pack. They never seemed bothered by the sight of a slaughter. They didn't care about much, just their mate. But they were reliable to his pack always. He'd not been sure why they had turned up out of the blue at first. He had just strolled right across his borders and waved any attacking wolf off into sleep. Then they'd looked right at him and announced, "We're here, Alpha Rafe, at your service." He had not called for them, but they had pledged loyalty, and the only thing that they seemed to want was a nice quiet place to live. They picked out a place and settled themselves in. Loyal they were, which surprised him, for witches usually only answered to themselves or their coven leader. Though these 3 redheads looked no more than 20, that's how they'd looked when they arrived. They hadn't aged a day in 10 years. Rafe turned to his dead, so many of them, and sighed. He hated the sight of lost wolves, still had no idea why Victor was attacking him, or what he actually wanted had yet to be voiced. But he could think of one reason. There was no active threat from him to Victor or the other way around as far as he knew, though he had declined an alliance with the man years ago when Lucy had still been with them. "Just those that aren't ours." "On it, Alpha." "Hey, what did you make of the girl?" "Not a girl." The 3 of them stated in unison and then simply walked off to magic away the enemy bodies. They were indeed very useful to him. "Cryptic as ever," Alan, his gamma, commented, walking over. He was covered in blood. Not the first time Rafe had seen that. The man's eyes lingered on the 3 hungrily. All 3 of them were his mates, 1 wolf to 3 witches. It was likely he was the actual reason that they came. They'd probably seen him. The full moon after they had arrived, the man had found himself staring right at the 3 of them. All of them had raised their arms up to him and called him mine. His wolf and he had growled it right back without any hesitation at all. "You'll find the answer." Alan laughed. "They'll say what they want to say. I'm just their fun toy." Rafe's wounds were healed by the time he got back to the pack house, and despite the battle being long over, it was still in lockdown mode. He mind-linked to Melissa that he was outside and she should open the pack house back up. Many she-wolves were distressed and crying from the loss of loved ones, whether it be father, brother, sister, or their mate even. They all had that hollowed-out and in-pain look. He'd lost 76 wolves today. It was not a good day at all. Melissa looked right at him, was frowning somewhat, but then she walked over and hugged him. He hugged her back, then pushed her away from him. He had work to do, and so did she, for that matter. Already he could see there were 3 small children sobbing horrendously. They lost both their parents in the battle that had raged. They were now her charges to console and find homes for. If there was no family to take them in, it was likely they would have grandparents here inside the pack somewhere, though them standing along with no female meant no grandmother, could well be orphans. Melissa would find out and let them know. That was part of her Luna duties. He now had to record the battle, his lost men, and make sure the cleanup was attended to properly. He'd have to send someone into the human town to make sure there were no reports of it, though his witches were also useful in the cleanup department. Not one bloody survivor to be brought back either. Any that had been still alive had died on the way to the cells. That creature's power, whatever she had done to them, its effects still working on them even after she stopped and vanished back into the depths of the lake. 7. Victor Point of View. With the sun barely touching the horizon and attacking from the eastern border of the Black Forest pack, he had the upper hand. For a start, those 2 arrogant pricks that ran this pack had no idea he was even coming for them at all, or even why. This day was going to be epic and completely in his favor. He was finally going to get what he came for. Victor had been sending rogues to scout out this pack for more than a year now, trying to find what was his. Those two pricks had taken it right out from underneath him before he even knew just how important it was to him, but he was going to get it back, and he did not care how many men he lost. He had tried to do it the nice way, obtain an alliance with them so he would have access to their pack freely, if the two arrogant pricks had agreed to that all those years ago. This war wouldn't be needed. He would just go in there and take what he wanted, collect it quietly, and leave. They did not need it anymore. Likely wouldn't even care if he took it. Well, mostly. Though Victor had not particularly wanted a war with a pack that held 3 witches, ones that were completely loyal to that bloody pack at that, nothing he had ever done over the past years in the lead up to today had ever enticed them to betray their pack, their alpha. They were not blind either. They always seemed to know when an attack on themselves was coming. They held great power, bloody triplets. He had gone to great lengths to find all he could about them, was still in fact working on that very thing, and had come up with little. Playing the long game was of no concern to him. He had a very long life ahead of him. A few years was nothing to him, and he would have what was his, regardless of how long it would take to obtain it. If it took 100 years and as many battles, so be it. He'd also learned those triplets were mated to the pack's gamma. It was no wonder they were so bloody loyal, that he had never been able to entice them to him. Hell, all his men had ended up dead. Some had made it home, then had just bled out in front of him. Some sort of magic spell, he presumed. Whoever those witches were, he'd not yet been able to find out who their original coven was. He had no idea where they came from, but he did know that they had been with the pack for a decade now. He also knew you did not mess with witches, especially triplets. Those who were born together in a coven were entwined with great power and could pull and push power between them, sharing it with each other to give the most powerful of the 3 power that was unmatched by anything. Unstoppable is what triplet witches were. He'd seen them do it, had damn near killed him and his unit 4 years ago. Those 3 witches lived in the northern woods. His reports had told him not inside the pack house where a gamma and his mate would normally live, but out in the woods, and he'd learned very quickly that any attack that came from the north was met with witchcraft and a swift death. He'd learned that the hard way, not to go for the gamma himself in order to weaken them, so he could obtain them for himself or get them to leave the pack. The gamma and his mates had some sort of magical connection. Whether it was natural because he was mated to the 3 of them, or if it was because they had put a protective charm on him, he did not know. But the one time he had managed to get that man alone in the nearby city, and he had, though not himself, hadn't wanted to reveal his identity to the man in case he got away, so he had hired a bunch of thugs to do it for him, was grateful for that prudent planning now. Victor had watched from the safety of his car. Its tinted windows protected him from view and not being allied. There was only a chance that the gamma would recognize him. He had just been hoping to get the man out of the way for good, to make them bloody witches run away filled with pain. His men, 6 of them, had managed to corner him. Victor had smiled and shook his head. The man had been all over the place, trying not to get caught, but had not actually fought any of them. The minute he had stopped running, he'd start to laugh like it was all a joke, and it was at that moment Victor knew something was very off. He had not been exactly sure what. His men had finally latched onto him, and then, one by one, he'd watched them all freeze and then just turn to red mist, a bloodied haze around the gamma. The man himself had put his hands on his hips and shook his head, looked at the mess, and himself, now covered in blood, had seen the man sigh heavily. Then one of his mates had just appeared right before him, reached up and touched his face. He'd not known which one it was, couldn't tell from behind, they all wore those hooded dresses at all times. But he had snapped a picture of the markings down her back. Victor had watched the man smile right down at his mate, and then they just vanished, poof, gone, as she had come. Used her bloody magic to come and collect her mate. The way she touched his face said it all. She loved that man. He would be her weakness, all their weaknesses. But getting to him, he sighed heavily, was too hard. He did not attempt it again. That smile on his face said it all. The gamma knew what was going to happen the minute they had him. His running away from them and not fighting had been his actual way of trying to save their lives. Obviously, it had been done before, and those witches loved the bastard so much. He was protected and likely with blood magic of their own making. Victor had never seen anything like it before. He was more than a little jealous of the man. So much power in those women. If they were his, he'd have bred little hybrid bastards constantly to get more power for himself. Hell, in 10 years he'd have 30 little bastard witch-wolf hybrids running around him already or more if he had got multiple births out of them, and that was completely possible, being they were triplets themselves. Those women would constantly be pregnant. He'd have 3 little breeding machines. He'd never gotten any reports of children, though. It was curious to him. They had been mated to the man for near on a decade, and not one little bastard half-breed between the lot of them. He would have punished the hell out of those women for refusal to provide him with a powerful offspring. He would have separated them and bound them, kept them apart until they all produced him an heir, and he would have visited each one of them, mated them damned hard whether they wanted it or not, till they gave him what he demanded of them. The eastern border of this pack was the hardest to defend. It was the furthest from the central part of the pack. That's why he had chosen it. His attack from here meant that they would be well inside the pack before that prick of an alpha and his beta knew he was even coming. He was going to be slaughtering everything in his path, man, woman, or child. They meant nothing to him. Nothing was going to stop him from taking back what was his. There was a clearing between him and that pack border, and to his annoyance there were already a dozen patrollers standing around. They had already been alerted to his presence. He was getting ticked off by the minute. He'd gone out of his way to find a time and a path that was not monitored by this bloody pack. He had taken his men on the long route and had even left his vehicles more than just a few miles away from the closest human town, had crossed through the woods on foot during the night even, so that if they did have someone in that town that damn near backed onto their pack, they would not be seen and reported. But it seemed now he'd missed something. He was not happy that they had been tipped off. This pack was large, and his men, though well-trained, all small units, trained to work as teams. They never fought individually. Not only was it safer, it was much more effective. 100 of his men in groups of 4. His men could take on twice their own number with minimal casualties, and if the pack they were attacking wasn't well-trained, even more. But this pack had well over 600 dedicated warriors to its name, not to mention those that would train but had other places within the pack. This pack was currently the 3rd largest he knew of and was allied with many. He had to do this swiftly and efficiently, go racing through the woods, taking on those warriors as they ran for the border before they formed a massive wall of resistance and made the pack impregnable. That was the plan. Slaughter half of them en route to the border, and the rest in close-quarter combat in the woods or center of the pack. He'd heard his unit's concerns about attacking Alpha Rafe, and so today had been years in planning. Everything was meticulously laid out before it came down to this moment, for if those pricks knew he was coming, he'd bring everyone. He only had one weakness, and getting to that woman would be impossible from this side. Perhaps he should have brought his allied packs and had them attack from multiple sides, while he simply snuck in and killed those 2 bitches that helped him and his beta maintain their power. Victor had known the man before he found his mate, before he and his beta had found their mates. He and his beta shared everything, and though he had never seen it for himself, them with their mates going at it, he knew those 2 were mated to twins. So it was likely he was going to have to kill both women, not just one, to weaken that alpha himself. He told his men to strip and shift. Better to start it now before all those warriors started turning up. He knew that they were on the way, just didn't know how far off they actually were. Then the battle was on. Wolves were coming in waves, small at first, manageable, and then en masse. He'd heard the alpha howl in the distance, a clear warning to the invading force that he was coming and, with his best, whole unit, plus likely the elite would follow him, then behind him the rest. The alpha and his unit would outrun every one of his men to get there. He made sure to warn his men to stay well clear of the Gamma, who was a large gray and white wolf, unless they wanted to be turned to red mist and die an instant death to keep their hands off of him, evade, and find a better target. Victor could not see those witches, but he was certain they would be out there somewhere. His wolf was standing overseeing the battle, his unit in front of him and several other units lined up in front of them. He was well protected, as was his unit. He could see Alpha Rafe's unit was trying to get to him. He sent wave after wave of his own men right at him. He was very pleased to see just how effective his men and his strategy was playing out. He trained all his men like Alpha units. His eyes were on the big prize, and he could see from here his men were winning. He did see several plumes of red mist going on throughout the battle, bloody witches and their protectiveness of their mate, though still no sign of them themselves, hidden by magic somewhere, he supposed. Then a full retreat came from the Alpha. Every one of Rafe's warriors fell back all the way into the woods a good 50 feet, a clear line drawn between his men and theirs. Likely those witches were up to something, and pulling his warriors back was to protect them. Then his wolf suddenly howled in pain, and Victor was forcibly shifted back to his human form, as were most of the men he saw, something he'd been hoping not to do. Those two had never seen his wolf or his Alpha unit's wolves either. He had made sure of that, knowing this day was coming. As long as none of them shifted, they could attack and leave if losing, and neither of those pricks would be none the wiser on who attacked them, still left in the dark, allowing him to come again, stay unknown. They were all scent-masked. His hands clamped over his ears, and he turned to the sound. It was killing his Alpha hearing. His wolf Bane was snarling and rippling inside his mind, wanting out and at that thing to kill it, but he couldn't actually get out. The sound was hurting him so much that he physically couldn't shift, and neither could his men. His eyes finally landed on it, out in the lake. Ah, now that made much more sense to him. A siren. Those two pricks had a fully grown female siren, and by the sheer size of what he was seeing, he knew he was seeing only half of her. Her tail was still under the water. She was a full-grown alpha-blooded siren at that. He couldn't focus properly on her to get a clear picture of her. This was very bad. She, if well-trained, could draw all his men to her and slaughter his whole war party. The pitch changed, and oh, the power that was within her. He was hungry for it instantly, saw how his men started turning towards her and dropping like flies as she literally exploded his men's brains from the inside. "Cover your ears!" he roared to his men. She was going to turn the tide of war. This was allowing Rafe's other warriors to catch up and form ranks along the border. It was just a matter of how long she could use that damn call for. The siren he had in his pack was lowly ranked and not worth bringing to battle, but she was a good study. He had yet to get a half-breed out of her either. Damned creatures did not produce offspring often. This creature was all power, and she knew how to use it. A third of his men were dead before she was out of breath. About bloody time. He blinked several times trying to get a clearer look at her, but that damned call of hers was still affecting his equilibrium. His sight was fuzzied by her call. He saw the thing take a step and shift into some otherworldly creature, and he was now watching with all he had. As his sight cleared, she became a scaled, half-shifted hairless wolf with exceptionally long claws, and there was water building around her hands. Oh, she was absolutely magnificent. The perfect mate to have strong and deadly. He had to have her. Victor could hear his men calling to him via the mind link. He ignored them. Could gather more any time he liked, filled his ranks with rogues, turned them into pack members and train them hard, lead them to the slaughter when needed. He wanted to know what it could do, had to know. There was raw alpha power of unknown origin within this creature, and he wanted it for himself. Therefore, to get to it, he had to wait it out and know just what it could do. Water suddenly shot out and away from the creature in razor-sharp spears. He turned sideways not to be hit right in the chest. That damn spear sliced right across his chest, ripped it right open, and blood ran down his chest. That was a pure-blooded alpha siren technique. Oh, how she was going to be his. He would have her, breed her, and create an army for himself. His eyes moved to his chest. It was already healing. Bane was good and strong. Looked around at his men. He could see that several had wounds through their necks, holes in their chests, and he realized as a battle cry rang out, he'd seen these wounds before on men he'd sent. They'd been unexplained injuries that caused death. Scouts that he'd found dead around the lake, every single one of them. His men were dropping like flies. That bloody creature had injured many, and her siren call was likely still affecting their ability to fight. Some of them were likely still dying, but just didn't know it yet. Damned sirens, so deadly when fully realized. The best war weapon anyone could ask for other than the water nymphs, a species that were closely related to them. Victor called his men to retreat, and they were gone off into the woods back the way they'd come. "What now?" his beta Gary asked, sounded very annoyed. "Home. I want that creature." "And Alpha Rafe?" "Fuck him for now. That creature is more powerful than what I came for." "The men?" "Are dead. Leave Rafe to dispose of them." He turned and looked at the lake. That creature likely lived in the very depths of it, though its human form was hideous to him. That thing was some sort of fucked up mixed breed, likely abandoned by its own parents to fend for itself. Could very well have been tossed in that lake to die. But that siren in it was an alpha female. If he could get it and under his full control, it would produce a very strong heir for him, and it bloody would give him an heir. If he had to mate it every damned day for a year, he would. Then he just turned and stalked away. He needed to research siren crossbreeds to see what the hell that thing was. He could send scouts with their sense masked as rogues, attach cameras to them to try and see if they could get a closer and clearer look at it. It was going to be his. He was going to be the one owning that power and be the one controlling it, and when he did, he would come and get what was his from those two pricks. He might just have that alpha held down and make him watch as he claimed that prick's mate for himself. See how he liked it when someone took something that was his.
Chapter 8. Lucy's Point of View. Standing outside her hut drinking her morning coffee, the headache she had been sporting from yesterday's battle had finally receded. The boys were doing well and had stayed with her unconscious body. Didn't seem all that bothered by it. Apparently knew she was all right. Surprised her quite a bit, but not Alari at all. Both boys were ready for school. They'd all had breakfast. She'd made them strawberry pancakes this morning, a treat for them being so very brave and well-behaved yesterday, looking after her while she was vulnerable to attack herself. They were good boys all the time, so very happy all the time, seemed to just love life. They were a good bit taller than the boys and girls their age that they went to school with. Their bloodlines, she knew. One pure-blooded alpha, and Callie stated that as far as they were concerned, they were both considered alpha-blooded. And though only little Rafe was of pure alpha blood, little Jack was an alpha as well, due to them and their blood. But Lucy still liked to think of little Jack as half beta-blooded, because that was what his father was. Her keen eyesight was watching the other end of the lake. Nothing, though. It seemed they were not interested in finding out what had helped them or why. Sighed to herself. Just happy, she supposed, to have gotten the assistance. It wasn't likely going to happen again anytime soon. It took a lot out of them to assist like that, and they'd been unconscious till late afternoon and woken with a splitting headache, which had not eased off until the very early hours of the morning. Victor, that son of a bitch, had looked right at her. His curiosity would be eating him alive. He was going to come back at some point, that much she knew with full certainty. He was going to sneak right up to this lake and try to get his filthy hands on her, or that creature in the lake. She wasn't exactly sure if his vision had been clear enough to see her, or recognize her, but it wouldn't matter to him. It was the power that he would be drawn to. Good luck, Alari yawned inside her mind. I'll explode his head first. Callie snorted, fully amused at Alari's comment. Even Lucy smiled, though she knew Alari was deadly serious. Victor would come fully prepared. He would be expecting any attack he brought to be defended with deadly force. She did not know if the man had seen her crumple into the water utterly exhausted. If he had, he'd be looking to get her into that state again. The man was a particular kind of intelligent. Always came fully armed with knowledge of what he was dealing with, and ready to handle it. He wouldn't arrive quickly, would go back to his pack, be researching everything he could about what he thought she was, though that siren call was a dead giveaway to a man like him. She highly doubted that he had missed it. "Mama." She turned to face her boys and smiled down at them. "Yes." "School time." They smiled up at her, happy to go and interact with the human children of the local town, a place of only 1,100 people, a small resort town, but bloomed out to nearly 4,000 in the holidays. It was very popular in the summertime and on long weekends. The population doubled every weekend. This lake was a magnet for humans. They loved coming here to swim, water ski, jet ski, and relax at the weekends. Lucy put her cup down and squatted down to look at them, with both Alari and Callie looking as well. They were feeling to see if today was the day her shifters were waiting on. Would they shift today unexpectedly while in the human school? Sometimes their deep dark eyes were a little on the pale side, but not today. A good sign they were not going to shift. Touched their little faces. Now you know to hide what you are. Watched as both boys looked at her and nodded. "Yes, Mama," they stated together. She was so proud of them. Knew what they were, how special they were, but happy to be human for the days and play with the other kids. "Okay, let's head off to school." It was a nice 1-hour walk down the woodland path to the human town, at a casual stroll, and the boys chatted the whole way. She strolled along just behind them, smiling as she listened to them, dropped the boys at the school, and waved goodbye to them. A normal human life 5 days a week for them and her. She headed off to her job at the local gym, her first spin class to start in just 15 minutes. Greeted her boss with a nod and a smile. She was a nice enough woman, but could be a royal pain in the ass if she had a bee in her bonnet about something. Lucky for Lucy, she did not have to come to work yesterday, or the woman would be berating her already for not turning up. Lucy walked into the staff room and placed her backpack in the locker that was hers, pulled her long hair up. It had once been a beautiful dark chocolate brown. Now it was more of a golden brown color. It changed when Alari had come along. A lot about her had changed too. She'd also gone from 5'8" to nearly 6 feet tall. Like all alphas and most warriors, when shifting for the first time, they had an instant growth spurt. Not many would recognize her from behind. Also didn't have the same scent as before. That too had changed with Alari's arrival. No more did she just scent of Callie. Alari's scent of freshly fallen rain was now with her too. Didn't scent like a wolf anymore. She did see the occasional pack member here in the town, just averted her eyes from them or glanced away from them. Sometimes Alari would send them away with her call if they got too close for their liking. She still looked just like her mother, a beautiful woman who had lied to her all her life now, it seemed. Her father, Orion, was clearly not her father at all. It was no wonder he never wanted her to take over his pack. She wasn't his heir, his mate's child to another. Had no idea who her real father was, but her mother had always told her she was special. Had doted on her even more than Thatcher, and she knew it. Must have loved that man, whoever he was. Clearly had to be a siren. Because otherwise, how would she have gotten Alari? Shook the thoughts of her family off. She didn't really have that much trouble with the pack members here in town. None of them ever came to the gym. The Black Forest pack had their own training grounds. They were massive, and everyone was allowed to train. She also didn't have to worry about the boys being seen. Their pack had a school from 5 to 12 years old. Only the teens come here to the local high school, and that was mostly just to get them used to dealing with humans and learning human rules. That school was at the other end of the town. She didn't have to worry about running into anyone that would recognize her. She'd been gone for a long time, and those teens would have been just preteens or younger when she'd been in the pack. Most pack members she found just drove through the town and headed for the city to get the things they needed. None had ever walked into the gym. The human gym was the safest place for her to go unnoticed, so close by to the pack. And she only worked 4 days a week, and only school hours. Being a single mother of 2 so young meant she had some constraints. Her pay was small, but they got by. They had a small but well-maintained vegetable garden outside the back of their hut, and 2 fruit trees. Their home had no electricity, so she'd bought camping gear for cooking that ran on gas cylinders, had a camp stove for cooking and an open wood barbecue as well. There was running water, which was good, but no hot water, so she had purchased a portable outdoor camping gas-heated hot shower and a couple of privacy screens to surround it. Though getting the gas to their hut was exhausting, she had no car, so she had to walk the empty bottles to the town's outdoor store and trade them for full ones, and they were heavy buggers to carry back. On the bright side, it kept her good and strong physically. Her money went into clothing, gas, and school supplies. They mostly lived on fish from the lake and the fruit and vegetables that they grew, a very healthy diet. Did buy meat in the cooler months of the year, when it was safe to carry it in the 1-hour walk home. She could move faster, but did not. There were several cabins dotted along the woodland path they used, and the roads all had driveways attached to them. They couldn't risk it. They looked like poor humans, and with no electricity to keep things cold, Lucy only bought what they would eat on the day or non-perishables. Her day passed like every other day. A spin class first thing in the morning, then assist the gym members with weight training, then run the yoga class before lunch. Then the afternoon was pretty much the same, just a repeat of the morning. Lucy wore the standard gym uniform of 3/4 black tights that sat across her hips, and a white crop top with the gym's logo across her more than ample breasts. Not something she liked. It drew the men's eyes to her full breasts. Her very well-defined abs were on display. There was nothing soft about her build anymore. She was all-toned muscled. Her boss had been shocked by her abs when she'd had her try on the uniform. But it had been expected. Her mother was an alpha-blooded female, and her father, who knew? She'd only ever known Orion, though she'd called him her father all her life. Now knew him to be her stepfather. He was an alpha wolf. She knew she had been born inside the Nightfall pack. So her mother had been mated to him while she was pregnant with Lucy, she supposed. Must have had a mate before him. Though had not once ever mentioned the man, as far as Lucy could recall. Had never even told Lucy Orion wasn't her actual father. Not even when she'd been sent away by her stepfather to be a concubine for Rafe and Jack, for her unruly behavior and continued sleeping with them against his wishes. But how could she not? They'd always been amazing in bed. She'd enjoyed visiting their pack and when they had visited hers, though they had tried to keep the sex a secret most of the time. Her father, or Orion, was always disappointed in her, even when she'd been little. Likely now, she realized, was to do with the fact that she was not actually his. She did have some good memories of the man growing up. He wasn't ever cruel to her, and was never ever allowed to physically punish her. Her mother would not stand for it. She actually heard her mother threaten to leave him if he so much as spanked her, and Lucy actually believed she would. There had been full meaning behind her words. To her surprise, Orion had actually apologized to her mother for yelling at Lucy and making her cry. She'd been like 12 at the time, and her little brother, Thatcher, had been 4. Orion did love her mother. There was nothing he wouldn't do for that woman. She was his goddess-gifted mate. That thought brought pain to her. She didn't have one of those, or 2 of those. sighed and pushed that thought away. Went and picked the boys up from school. They were happy to see her as always. She had never felt such a strong connection to anyone before, not even her Alpha and Beta. The love that filled her, just looking at them, filled her heart completely. They hugged her like always, and then the three of them headed on home, back down the woodland path. It was well shaded, and though it wound up and down hills, they were all used to it. Life was back to normal, it seemed.
The view. Jack was not convinced that the thing in the lake had killed Lucy. It looked too much like her, so similar in facial features, and then to see that wolf thing come out of it, shifting to another form altogether, a double shifter if ever there was one. It was completely possible in his mind that the thing was Lucy. His research told him there were double shifters out there, so why couldn't it be possible for Lucy to be one? Though it did state double shifters shifted between forms, not combined them. Perhaps she was just special? Yes, Lucy had been a wolf, but she had gone into that lake and had never come out, according to the border patrolman that had alerted them to her being out at the lake that night, tears pouring down her face. It had been only then that he and Rafe realized just how badly they had fucked shit up where she was concerned. They had hurt her. Then the man had been yelling down the mind link at them that she was going to kill herself. Said she'd smiled right at him, a weird and strange-looking smile, had even told him she wasn't going to do anything silly. It had struck fear into the man like he'd never felt before. That man had actually left his post on the border and had gone into the lake after her himself. He hadn't been able to get her, said she was too fast. He dived into the water just seconds after her, had been yelling her name the whole time. To come back, she'd not even seemed to register it. He had been yelling her name the whole time to come back. She'd not even seemed to register it. She was in a trance-like state. He'd not been able to find her in the darkened water. When he and Rafe had gotten there, he'd been sitting at the water's edge in ankle-deep water, sobbing almost uncontrollably. "She didn't come up," was all he could say. The man had lashed out at them and nearly gone crazy when they tried to pick him up from the water. It had been insane. They'd had to drag him away from the water's edge, away from the lake, and he'd been kicking and screaming all his claws out. They'd believed him to be traumatized by not being able to save her, until Hannah and her sisters had arrived, put their hands on the man. After just a few minutes, Hannah looked up at Rafe and stated, "His mind is fractured. Something has gotten inside of his mind." She actually sounded worried for the first time since she'd come to the pack. Usually, she was relatively emotionless about everything other than her mate. The three of them had used magic to put the man to sleep, then they had turned to the lake. "Don't go in there," the three of them had stated in union. "It's dangerous out there." It looked just like a lake to him. "Look at the water," Hannah had said, and then sent out a ball of witch's light from her hand. It traversed out across the lake, and sure as hell it was not a calm lake. The water was pulsing and undulating out there in the middle, like it was alive and had its own furious heartbeat. He'd not even realized that the lapping water by the edge had been in a completely rhythmic motion. "What is it?" he and Rafe had asked them at the same time. Jack had watched the three of them stand there and stare out over the lake, then close their eyes after a minute to focus better, he had presumed. "Death," they had said, and urged everyone to walk away from it. Hannah had stated that anyone who went into the lake right now would end up as fractured as the border patrolman was himself. Their patrolman had to be put down, so fractured by being in that water that he'd been unable to make a coherent sentence. Not even Hannah and her sisters had been able to reach the man and save his mind, and they had tried. The only blessing was that the man had been unmated. They had lost contact with Lucy that night. They had tried to reach her via the mind link to apologize as they'd raced towards the lake, but it had been severed violently each and every time. So strong was the severing, it had actually caused both of them pain as it was ripped away from them. They couldn't feel her. Yet Rafe had sworn she was not severed from the pack, and he as the Alpha felt every severing from the pack, whether it be from going rogue or being initiated into another pack, or death. but he swore black and blue she had not gone rogue or died. He just couldn't feel her anymore. It was weird to him. The lake had been a no-go zone. The witches had kept a very watchful eye on it. 3 days it had pulsed and rippled, been a death trap of pain and agony, and they had stated that anyone going into the lake would come out as fractured as the border patrolmen. They had even set up some sort of magical protection to limit the humans going into the lake, though a few had gotten past it and ended up dead not long afterwards. Whatever was in that lake would fracture any otherworldly creature, but was certain death to a human. The lake had been completely banned to the pack after that. Lucy had never come out, gone in where only death had awaited her. Both he and Rafe knew they were responsible for her disappearance. They had been so wrapped up in their mate bonds, neither of them had thought to even call the woman who they'd been sharing for so long. Goddess, the woman could drive them into a mating frenzy sometimes, and she had craved them just as much, had actually gone into heat with them a few weeks prior to that night, mated the hell out of both of them for 4 solid days, completely insatiable the whole time. It had actually been the best 4 days they'd ever had, even to this day. Nothing had even come close to that. Jack pulled his mind from the thought. Part of him and his wolf still missed the girl. Something about her there always had been right from the first time she'd shifted here in this pack, just outside the pack house dining room. They'd been told she was wolfless and to keep their hands off of her. She'd been trouble right from the moment she'd stepped out of the father's car. She'd smiled right at him and Rafe, and the moment she'd laid those brilliant green eyes on them, he'd wanted her. She was beautiful, and so against her father's rules. Jack shook his head to try to clear it, to stop thinking about her. "You all right, Jack?" "Can't clear my thoughts," he admitted to Rafe. Lucy was all he could think about right that minute. "Go find your mate," Rafe had stated. His mate, a pretty blonde, blue-eyed woman, small of stature and soft all over, didn't like training, did the bare minimum. He knew Rafe was telling him to go and have sex with Maria. It would take his mind off his other thoughts, but for how long? Till he was done was the answer, and he knew it. "I'll be fine." Jack turned back to the paperwork he was filling out. His pen, though, halted over the paper. He didn't want to have sex with his mate right this minute. They'd been trying to have a pup for many years now. Apparently it was his fault. She was fine, had even gotten a fertility test when she'd gone home for a family visit, and everything was fine and normal. She went into heat once a year. She begged him regularly to mate her and put a pup in her, and he did try. It just never happened. She blamed him. Though he too now had been tested and everything was normal, he was more than capable of getting her pregnant, just couldn't for some reason. Sex with Maria, though it felt good, always ended up with her gasping for him to put a pup in her, not his name anymore like it had once used to be. It would be going great, pleasure for him and her. Their bond intact, riled him up good and proper, though she always wanted him to slow it down, never seemed to like it with all his beta needs in full swing, never got to really just give it to her, lose all control and pound the hell out of her. She didn't like it rough at all. He'd learned what she liked and tended to her needs, how she liked it. The sex could be really good sometimes, until those bloody words came out of her mouth, and then he just lost the drive to finish properly. And those words now were every time they had sex. It was only different when she was in heat. It was the only time he was allowed to mate her like crazy, all lust-filled and uncontrollable, raw need from her during her heat. 5 days of rough, I-got-to-have-it sex from her. She was all animalistic for him, and he really loved it. But still nothing, no pup. Still told him it was his fault, even though the doc said it wasn't, and it honestly made him and his wolf Flair feel inadequate. Not that it stopped her from wanting to have sex. She liked the sex, told him it was amazing. But it wasn't for Jack. He knew it could be better. If she would just let Rafe into their bed, goddess, it would be amazing. The two of them touching her, pleasing her. She'd get so damned high on pleasure she'd feel like she was seeing stars, and he knew it. His eyes moved to Rafe, to find the man looking right at him. The damned man knew what he was thinking about. Jack could see the expression on his face. 6.5 bloody years and not once in the same bed. Rafe sighed. He understood. "Come on, let's go for a run. I need to get out of my head too." For although Jack had given up trying to convince his mate, his alpha still fought for them even all these years later. Jack had let it go, resigned to the fact she would never allow it. Caused him pain every time she screamed at him about how sick he was, wanting to see another man's dick inside me, were her words. She didn't understand him, never had, and sometimes just looking at his mate caused him pain. "Let's," Jack nodded. They stepped outside and let Solar and Flare shift them, and their wolves just ran into the dense woods at full speed, wherever they wanted to go. Even their wolves' names could be joined to make one word, were close like he and Rafe were. Though Flare had no interest in his wolfen mate, had only ever mated her once during their marking and mating, never since. It was odd behavior. Why couldn't their mates see that they actually needed this? It wasn't a choice. It was who they were, what they longed for, needed to feel whole, to be completely happy. Maria and Melissa were twins. He and Rafe had been very excited about that. Not identical, but twins often shared mates. It was perfect for them. Hell, the two of them had started planning how to rearrange the Alpha's floor and remodel it to incorporate the four of them in the one bed. Goddess, they'd been so excited about it. Though both had agreed to mark and mate their mates as normal, no sharing until they got back to the pack, had left it alone for the time inside the girls' home pack. Most of their allied packs knew who they were, that they shared everything including their women. It was likely so did their mates. The women were so very close too, practically inseparable, that he and Rafe had not even considered that they would say no. Also thought the two of them had just wanted to wait until they were back here inside their new pack. They had always been eyeing the pair of them off and giggling about something. But it had not gone as planned. There had been yelling and screaming almost instantly. When he and Rafe had started kissing their mates, pressing them back against one another, that part neither had seemed to care about. It had been in the Alpha's office. They both had their backs pressed together, and excitement had filled not just him but Rafe as well. He'd felt it, but when their hands had moved to the other mate's hips, they had their hands shoved violently away and the yelling had begun.